Oh, that is correct, my friends. Little pregame live action. Diving in on some stats, having some fun. No big deal. Locked On Nets podcast right after the theme music.
You are Locked On Nets, your daily Brooklyn Nets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All good. Welcome in. We are officially live here. Doug Norrie to my left, your right. Brooklyn Nets game, 30 minutes out. Figured, like we said, come in, do a little pregame live. We saw some good feedback over on the chat. We'll get the comments up. If you got an interesting question, conversation, fears, and trepidations around the game 3 for the Brooklyn Nets, you can certainly go ahead and fire them away. We'll get them up as they come through. Like, how's the bum meter? How's it's the bummer scale. We went with the bummer scale, something a little bit more appropriate. Let's put it that way. But Matt Brooks is fully on the bummer scale. I think we have to wait and see. You know, there's a couple of stats that I want to get into here along the way. Don't anticipate. Listen, Doug Norrie may say something at some point, but this is also a guy that has where he's got things to do. He's covering a lot of different avenues. He's a sportsman. He has stats.
Baseball projections to go rolling through here. Matt Brash tonight.
MLB. Oh, Matt Brash. Anyone in on some Matt Brash tonight?
Noah Syndergaard taking the mound.
Probably not. So we'll see. As far as the bummer scale, I don't know. As we have Dallas actually on in the background here in a 1-point game with 208. Oh, Luka, he's down. Oh my God, he's down. It's just his face though, so he'll be fine. But listen, it depends on how this game goes, right? You can have Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving come out and do what they do offensively, and Brooklyn wins the game. They lost the 2 road games. This is their first home game, and you're theoretically right back in the series. If you watch the conversation with Matt Brooks, you know that we listed a myriad of reasons why this could go poorly for the Brooklyn Nets. But I don't know if there's ever going to be a point where the results of this series are going to further determine anything for the Brooklyn Nets or for our perspective on the Brooklyn Nets, given everything that led up to this point. And to say nothing of Ben Simmons, we know that Time Lord is going to play tonight. Robert Williams for the Celtics, so they're going to get him back 1 game sooner.
Only about 20 minutes.
Yeah, just 20 minutes. Just 5-minute bursts, 1 in each quarter.
20 minutes of a guy who was going to be like a borderline defensive player of the year if he had just played the whole. if he had played down the stretch.
Yeah, exactly. Let's see what we got here. Yeah, we'll throw up one from William. Love the show. Of course you do. We appreciate it. Thanks for coming in. What do you got? Do they really have what it takes to win 4 in a row? Well, if they lose tonight, do they have? No, I mean, listen, there's not a lot. I don't think
they lose tonight. It's
I don't think any team,
no teams,
no basketball to win 4 games.
No basketball team has ever come in the playoffs has ever come down from 3 outs.
At least from a being down 0-3 standpoint, winning 4 in a row. You can win 4 in a row and just sweep a team. Obviously, the Nets have done that before. No. They need to win this game. You need to win this game, and you need to prove Kevin Durant needs to prove that he can just beat a really good defense. And I saw some great comments from Ime Doku asked about what they've been doing with Kevin Durant, how they've been approaching him. And he basically said, it's not just about the physicality. It's not just about the man who's on the ball defending him. It's also about every single player that's on the court for Boston has an eye on where Kevin Durant is at all times. And they've just essentially committed to the process of saying we're never going to be at a spot where we cannot help on defense, send the extra body, crowd the airspace for Kevin Durant. And you can throw in the elements of what's compounded those issues as far as how Kevin Durant is, played to start this series. But it's been an incredibly committed approach from the Boston Celtics. And at some point, whether it's Kevin Durant overcoming it all onto himself or trusting his teammates and needing to accept that the only way you're going to force Boston to change something is if you accept that you cannot get this done on your own, I think would be my initial theory going into this game. But just answer your question, no, they'll lose and it'll be all over. And Doug and I will have some real problems if they lose tonight.
We'll start talking some off-season content. Now, I think this should be a good game. I do not think the series is over. The stats are alarming when teams are down 2-0. So that's a problem. And so even if they were to win, I mean, it's just you need to win 4 of the next 5 games. I mean, that's just kind of the way it is now, right? Like, yeah, there's no room for error now. And so, but I think they know that. And I think this is a hard fought game. And the series has been close for the most. I mean, this has been a very close series, right? So it's not like this has been some kind of stomping on the part of the Celtics. But I do think that there's a nervousness now that you probably wish you didn't have. And they're probably, they're half a second away from that in game 1 on the Tatum buzzer beater, right? So I was actually going to tweet out today wondering what a bigger bummer was. And it was just going to be a picture of Kevin Durant's foot from last year against the Bucks. Or the other one was going to be just Tatum spinning right before, right before. Because I did feel like that.
Spin move.
Yeah, it wasn't the same exact thing because the Durant thing at that point was so... He had just done so much, but it was a gut punch for them to lose that game against the Bucks. But the Tatum one felt as bad. I think I felt as bad on the Tatum buzzer beater as I did on the.
Well, we already did. The post game episode was not a place for me to be because
pretty bad play. No, you were better. You were better for the.
Game 2. That's right. No,
you were worse game 2.
Yeah, game 1. I kind of said, they got lucky.
Game 1, I was like in a not amazing place.
Daniel followed up. This might be a dumb question, but if Ben plays game 4, do you think he'll start or come off the bench? We can talk about it. He'll come off the bench.
Yeah, I think
you'll ask him to do very little.
Definitely come off the bench, play like 15 minutes.
Yeah, you're basically.
I think they already said that.
And you would want him to. We talked about it with Matt Brooks the other day in the two-parter about Bruce Brown is already doing so many of the things that you would expect Ben Simmons to do. It doesn't mean Bruce Brown is Ben Simmons, but taking out Bruce Brown, who has been so consistent, to insert someone that at least at this point you don't have any guarantees of what he's going to give you. It's a tall order. I don't think you would never want to put Ben Simmons into that set of circumstances where basically it's up to him. Now you're in the starting lineup, go make it happen. I watched Brunson miss the layup on the last possession, but Luka followed it up in that Dallas-Utah game.
Trying to hunk Gobert here at the end, but then Bogdanovich fought over the switch and it still got roasted. So
went for it and still didn't get there.
There's like a minute left in this Utah game. People are probably watching that in the background. Mitchell.
Javon, who's always in on our YouTube. He's our faithful, hit the like button, subscribe button. He saw the tweet. He saw the photo. There are concerns in Nets world.
Well, the joke here is that Adam and I are 0-6 this season. When the Nets are 0-6 when Adam and I watch games together. Most recently, the Dinwiddie buzzer beater with Dallas. The game we went to earlier in the year. So yeah, it's been a rough stretch. So we're hoping to reverse the curse tonight.
Well, we'll see. But by the way, they've lost now. They're down 0-2. So that's 2 negatives make a positive is our theory, and that's why we got together for this one. William, you have to agree this team needs to get way bigger on defense. If they lose this series, this is a big problem. I
don't think they need to get bigger on defense. I think they need to get more athletic on defense.
Yeah.
They need to get longer. Like, I don't think just a big body does not make sense. Like, I'll give the example of like adding Mason Plumlee or something like that. That's just that's a bad example, maybe. Like, just some kind of weird traditional center. I do not think that is what they need. They're desperate right now for a wing defender like Simmons, frankly, like someone that can range between guarding 2 through 5, somewhere around that, or 1 through 4 or whatever. They desperately need it. They don't really have anybody like that. And the only one that's even kind of close, well, Durant can do it, but you don't want him to do it. And the other guy is Claxton. And you just have offensive limitations when he's on the court with Bruce Brown and guys like that. So you'll have the same problems with Simmons, but at least Simmons can like secondary ball handle, get out in transition. Like, he can do a few other things that would mitigate some of those issues. They're just desperate for that kind of guy. And they just don't have them. They were supposed to be Ben Simmons. Like, that's really pretty.
It's one of those things too, where like, I feel like from watching the playoffs and watching some of these other teams, watching the Timberwolves, you see just athleticism. Like, youth, energy, and athleticism it doesn't mean you're going to win series, but it means that you can stay competitive. It means that even when you're outmatched or outsized, quickness can matter. The Boston Celtics, they're not enormous across the board, but they're very switchable defensively. They have good length. They have good strength. I'm going to call it size. I'll call it strength. They can body up against players, and that it's versatility when it comes from that standpoint. You look at the Brooklyn Nets right now. We'll get back into some of these comments here that are just like when we do the post-game pods. They start coming a little too fast and furious for me. Can't quite keep up with them. But when you think about a Seth Curry, when you think about a Patty Mills, when even Dragic, even Bruce Brown, like all these guys, everything that you're asking them to do is to say, do a bit more than you would expect to be capable of. Overplay against bigger matchups defensively, overcome the fact that there's size and there's strength on the other end here, and there's multiple blitzing looks coming at you from the Boston Celtics. So it has come to light to me over the course of these playoffs that, and this is what happens with a lot of teams, you get the superstars and then you sacrifice and you build it out with vet minimums, etc. But the Nets they're not an athletic team, behind Kyrie Irving and behind Kevin Durant. They have a lot of limitations inside of that rotation, and it's obviously predicated on a lot of stuff. Injuries, James Harden, Ben Simmons not being there, like all of those things matter. And it obviously diminishes some of the other guys like Blake and like LMA and whatever roles you thought they were going to be in coming into this one. Let's take a look. What else we got here? I'm going to try to see. I'm just going to fire up a couple of these here. Sure wish you never traded for Harden. Well, yeah, that's the.
Adam and I were just talking about that.
I was going to say, I was just saying how from an off-season content standpoint, but you brought up all these names, and the one that even in the moment, because I love young players, Jared Allen was hard to see go. But like you mentioned, Karis LeVert and Spencer Dinwiddie, those guys to me they're in the margin players. Like I can replace them. And I'm not saying you can't replace Jared Allen too, but that's just more that it's a young player that the Nets drafted, that they developed, that was starting to be ready to take that next step forward. It's what we're thinking and hoping for with Nicholas Claxton. So to see him go, it obviously hurts. But again, I struggle with it a little bit with Jared Allen at the time. But for the most part, I agreed when Doug and I talked about it of every team in the league would do the exact same things that the Brooklyn Nets did. The fact that injuries and all this stuff happened in behind it makes you then reflect back and say, well, you could have just had X, Y, and Z. By the way, Karis LeVert struggles with injuries, right? Jared Allen went down with an injury for the Cleveland Cavaliers this year. Like those things are, you can't predict those. You can't predict those circumstances. So it's really hard to go back and think about how you wish you still had some of those players. Understand it. Again, if I could have Jared Allen, believe me. If I could have traded James Harden to Cleveland when he wanted out instead of Philadelphia and gotten back Jared Allen, I probably would have. Let's throw up William here, and we're gonna go until 7:30. Get ourselves out of the way here. If you're enjoying this, just shoot us comments. If it's not in here, over on YouTube, follow us over on Twitter. Let us know, and we'll try to do these whenever we can, assuming that there's more games to play for Brooklyn after game number 4. Sean Marks has been a good GM, but if they lose in the first round, definitely Nash has to be gone, and Marks needs to really figure out where the franchise needs to go. Yeah, but see, again, like this is the thing, and I understand where you're coming from, William, but again, Steve Nash inevitably, and we talked about this with Brooks the other day too, he'll end up being gone because that's what happens. You don't fire Kevin Durant because he struggled against the Boston Celtics. You fire the coach, and there's going to be a myriad of reasons why that's justifiable. Same thing with Sean Marks. Okay, you can look at him and say, what has he done well or poorly? But he successfully drafted and developed Jared Allen to the point where you could utilize him as a piece to go get a superstar talent. He constructed a roster predicated on 3 superstars being there. Once one goes and you get him replaced with an injured, currently unavailable Ben Simmons, all the other pieces that you put in place there don't necessarily fit. But if you go into this offseason now, you have the money and the decision around Joe Harris. You have Ben Simmons, whether he's going to be a part of it or move off of it. You'll have options. Sean Marks is going to have options. Let's just go. I want to get into a couple of quick things here around this game because that was actually the intention of it. But I'm pretty sure this is what happens when you do lives, is that you get derailed in whatever fans are into, and that's not a problem for me. The thing that I took away from that last game too was the Nets only had actually outshot the Boston Celtics by 1 in that game. They do it. Donovan Mitchell.
Yeah, Mitchell just took the lead
with 11 seconds left. 1 point.
I was wondering if they would
Utah.
take a quick shot there, like that, because. Oh, sorry, it was alley-oop. Yeah, I looked at it went in
between the two players that couldn't stand each other any less. That was a nice one there, though. They went for it. And by the way, quick offense, right? Not waiting for it and just getting the best look that you can get as quick as possible. Nets took one more shot in the game number 2 where they lost. Some of the things that, when you think about what keep you concerning, Boston's a bad 3-point shooting team. They only went 11 of 31 in that game, 35%, and they still won by 7 by the end of it. They shot 80% at the line, so that was good. The rebounding was even in that game, 36 apiece, and the Nets still lost that one. The assist numbers were obviously atrocious. We mentioned that. Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving have to do a better job with that. Do you think that Goran Dragic, would you start him
No, I don't think so.
All right. But this just getting the vibes here.
Because I don't know who would you start him over, Curry?
Yeah,
but
I guess it kind of diminishes it a little bit. I guess you'd have to start him over Bruce if you're going to do that, right?
You can't do that either.
I know, but that's what I mean.
So,
you can't take away your shooter and Seth Curry.
Yeah, I think I would just keep this. He's fine coming off the bench, 24 minutes in stretches. You know what I mean? Something like that. Give energy. We talked the last game how maybe the tank was kind of empty near the end of the last game.
Let's go into what time do we got here? We're dialing in. We got plenty of road here. We can tell you how exciting it is to see Dallas pull this one out and go up 3-1 potentially. Both Doug and I took Utah in the in our playoff picks. So
Brunson, this is gonna be fun podcast. Brunson over the reset
into Luka,
blitzed them
out to the wing. Spencer Dinwiddie, same spot.
Oh, that was the same
that
spot
he buried it against Brooklyn. He hits side rim miss, literally the exact same spot, and he actually had a much cleaner look than he did against Brooklyn. Much better defense by Brooklyn, if that makes any sense.
That was the exact same spot that elbow extended or above the break three. Oh, that's crazy. Looked like it was right on line too, just short. I got a good series here too.
Okay, good.
It is hilarious, Mitchell to Gobert on that rim run.
Well, but you know what's funny too, since we can get a little far afield, I find it hilarious that the nobody pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. I find it hilarious that they talked about 2 years ago it was the biggest deal, Mitchell and Gobert, and they can't play together. They both won out. Then they're the 1 seed last year. Now they don't necessarily achieve the ultimate goal last season, but it kind of went away. And then this season it was the same thing. They're fizzling. They're struggling. Now everyone's saying, these guys are going to be out there. You're going to have to switch it up. And then whether or not they didn't have Luka, Dallas got the 2-1 lead. Listen, you're tied in a series. If you win this and you get to the next round, the grass isn't always greener, I guess would be my thing. If you're the Jazz, if you're Mitchell, if you're Gobert. I don't know I wonder how much quality legs Gobert has left on him.
He's got a long contract. He's good. I mean, what
was he, 30?
He's so polarizing. I get why. We can talk about the Nets. We don't need, but I get why he's polarizing. It's mitigated some if you have even more dynamic offensive talent on your team. So they have one very good offensive player, right. And then a sort of aging Conley, a Bojan Bogdanovic who's can kind of come and go. But if you put him next to two dynamic offensive guys,
everything really starts to get.
It just looks total. I just think it looks totally different. So.
Fair enough, but stop talking about the Jazz, Doug. Dom, Nash doesn't use Patty very well. I think they need to call Pop.
I say Patty Mills is unplayable in this Boston series? I don't know how you can play him.
And this is my running theme around why when again
he's not unplayable, but it's really close. He's just way too small. They pick him off every single time. All Boston's bigger across the board. Their guards are huge. Even with Derek White or Marcus Smart, guys like this, it's so hard for him. This is just not the series for him. They're just too big across the board. If they were playing kind of anybody else, I think it wouldn't look as bad. But he's just too small. This is such a unique. This Boston team is kind of not like the Nets ran bad here, but this was just one of the worst teams they could have faced in the first round here because the defensive challenge. They are clearly up for the defensive challenge on Brooklyn. It's not been a runaway series, but I would not play Patty Mills more. I
don't think he can. And that's, I guess, to my point about it can be a both and. Steve Nash can be struggling to make adjustments or figure out how he wants to run the offense, and he can have limited options as far as how you improve the chances for Brooklyn. You can't play Patty Mills. I almost threw him in on the minutes when we talked about, I tweeted out on Twitter. Where else would you put him? About minutes and how few players, LaMarcus Aldridge, Blake Griffin, 2 players that aren't even there anymore in Bembry and also in James Johnson. I almost included the minutes from the regular season in Patty Mills because you've been able to utilize them so little in this series now that right, wrong, and different. These are just players that were really big contributors during the regular season and are unusable now, which is a pretty, you start to get into a pretty, someone even threw out to me, they said Javon Carter as well, which I went and looked. He actually played over 500 minutes, which I was borderline shocked. Really? Yeah, I was shocked. 552 minutes for the Nets. So all of these minutes, all these guys, I got to 4,100 if you threw in Patty. I mean, you're talking about 6,000 minutes of game action throughout the season, and none of these guys are capable of doing it in the playoffs, or at least in this series as it stands right now. So that makes it a little bit tricky too. It does have me ruminating on some off-season thoughts around how things could have been done differently throughout the year. Again, it's predicated on if they win or lose this series and how bad it looks. That's when you start to get a little bit more judgmental. Evlar, I know Nash is a problem, but for tonight, our main issue is praying KD is KD again. Yeah, that pretty much would solve your problems.
They just have to get him better looks. Like I was thinking about this the other day, like when Adam and I talked this morning, when Adam brought me coffee at my house, very nice. And my wife brought her a chai tea latte. It was her first like real caffeine. She was absolutely bouncing off the wall. She could feel it. She was like, I feel like a shot out of a cannon.
Yeah. That's what I like to do. I like to drop in a real jolt and then get the heck out of the way.
But we were talking about Peyton Pritchard and like the inability to just seek him out and just roast him every single time on defense. Like these little things that kind of just are 101 stuff that to not have it get done seems weird. Like I'll put it this way. If Peyton Pritchard is on the court tonight and he's not getting, if they aren't working a switch into getting someone on him every time, like it's kind of almost a fireable offense for Nash.
Then you'll get pretty aggressive on your opinion of him and what he's doing or not doing.
It would just mean they're not doing anything.
Right.
It would just mean nothing's happening. And so, because it's so blatantly obvious, and that's just like not my opinion either. This is just like kind of a universal opinion around this. It's the exact same thing we just talked about with Mills, except that it actually does happen with them. So I would be hard pressed. I don't know. It's that's something to watch out for in this game. I actually wonder how much Pritchard will play here now that Robert Williams is back, because I wonder if they not like he's a 1-for-1 guy. They'll just continue to keep going size and just go 4 minutes. And Boston, one thing I'm worried about with this game too is that Boston, while the Nets are desperate to win, Boston can probably feel like they can just end it tonight.
Oh, yeah.
A win tonight could effectively end it. So when you're talking about motivation, they're kind of a little bit on house money here because the expectation is that they don't have to win, but they know the series is done if they win this game.
Someone they're talking about, Williams is coming back, and then the timeline with Ben Simmons and why not game 3 versus game 4. And they're like, if Williams can come back, and saying about, well, it's desperation time. Brooklyn's down 0-2, but I think to your point, like it's desperation time for the Celtics. Like, if you can use 20 minutes of Robert Williams tonight to go up 3-0, then it's over. Like then that's the end of it. There's nothing else Brooklyn's not coming back from that. Like that's the bottom line.
No team is coming back. It's not even a Brooklyn thing. It's just no team is coming back from 3-0.
But Brooklyn's not coming back from it. That's correct. The point that I'm making, Doug. We got to switch it over here as some broadcasts are doing a little bit of a different approach to entertainment value on the evening. We'll see if all right, we're all lined up here now. The other thing real quick here before I get to you, Daniel, I saw your question up there. I had also just made a note of this earlier today that Kevin Durant is averaging career lows in the first 2 games of this series from a playoff perspective in field goal percentage, 3-point shooting percentage, points per game, rebounds per game, blocks per game, turnovers per game, and plus minus. He's never been a minus in the playoffs. He played 0 his career at OKC, minus 23 in the first 2 games of this series, and is the lowest plus minus on the roster. Incidentally, Bruce Brown is the second worst plus minus ratio, which is insane given that he had a real, even game number 2, he's still a -8 in game number 2.
And he was like +9 for the first 90 seconds of the game.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, went 9-0 versus the entire Boston team at one point. So that was pretty nuts as well. But what happens to the podcast? If this is a sweep, Daniel, we keep podcasting, my friend. That doesn't stop us. We'll immediately launch into a full court press around what needs to change, what would be potential. Listen, we'll talk about the idea of how do you reshape this roster? What do things look like? If Nash is going to be gone, who are candidates that you could talk about? We don't go anywhere. We will keep right on plugging along and probably just tell you how bad the other teams in the playoffs are and why Brooklyn could have beat all of them, that kind of stuff. And we'll take solace if Philadelphia gets bounced out. I think we'll do that, right? You'll get in your fan bag.
I'll tell you, the Sixers today, you got to be really, this, so crazy about this. Every other team, like Middleton is hurt now, which really it crushes Milwaukee's ability here. Too. And injury sucks or whatever. I'm never rooting for him. Embiid looked horrible today, like with his thumb. He's got a tear in his thumb. Basically, he's going to play through it. He looked very bad. Especially trying to get on the glass. It was almost like they were trying to limit his need to go after the ball. From a rebounding point of view. And so now it's like
Miami's conference to take.
Yeah, I mean, no, Lowry's hurt. That's why I knew there was another one.
Yep.
Lowry's hurt now. I'm not sure how bad that one is, but he's questionable for tomorrow. So all these other teams are dealing with these injuries to really, really key components of their team. And I kind of was joking at first that whoever won this series was going to come out of the East.
Boston, yeah.
It was kind of tongue in cheek when I said it, but I now actually do think it, because the Middleton injury is terrible for them. And then obviously Embiid's like, if he's not 100%, like Philly doesn't really have any chance at all. So it just is lining up for one of these two teams to just maybe have it kind of a lot easier than you would have thought. And now they just are going to have a rock fight through these two games.
I saw Marcelo Robinson. I can't believe how many people thought that the Nets were title contenders. Well, they are. They were. I mean, this is not the version of the team. You say, Marcelo, you can chime in again if you want about the beginning of the year. Now coming.
Well, we kind of thought that we kind of did say later in the season that we were still very surprised when they were fighting for the play-in tournament.
Oh yeah,
and we were like, they're
stretch.
Still the second highest. Like that's weird. It did feel weird in that context. I'm with you on that part. I think they were still title contenders.
Right.
I think the part where they were second overall favorites until basically the season ended, that felt crazy. But I don't think it's weird to have them say they're in title contention. Like that's.
Oh, Marcelo said post Harden trade.
I still think it is when you think you're getting Simmons. When you think Simmons is on some kind of crazy timeline, when Kyrie is coming back full strength and going to play all the time. Curry, like when those things are happening, like that's post trade, and I think all that still put them in that talk. It's looking at it now, it feels nuts, but I think that if you go back and look at it contextually, it's hard. They just were. There was enough reason to feel hope. They still have Kevin Durant. Like I don't know. James Johnson was still on the team.
Remember when James Johnson was on the team?
He'd be playing in the series, by the way.
Well, but that was kind of the point that I made about guys that weren't on it. It was like you made this. This is the question that I threw in at the back end of it, and I know like this is more of an all-season thing too. I'm developing some real thoughts around the younger players. Like why keep Kessler Edwards for the postseason? Like why? I understand maybe there's a future matchup you like him better in, but you've played him a total of 7 or 9 minutes in the first 2 games. Like, and I get it. I'm not saying that.
The secret is it really, if it didn't matter, it would have been Blake or Aldridge that got cut. But those guys are just more famous. That's just the only thing. That's the only thing that makes sense.
That I get. I'm saying if you made the active choice, you want to bring Kessler with you. There's other guys you would have cut because you would have used James Johnson. That's fine. But I'm saying now you have Kessler Edwards. What's the point of cutting James Johnson?
Oh yeah, but I don't think you're beholden to playing him just because you made the move. Like I don't think just because you did it, you promise that he gets to play. I don't think that is 1-for-1. I guess my problem is, and it's not like I don't think James Johnson swings the series by any means.
No.
I don't think it really matters.
But
But he was definitely playing more. He has more defensive versatility than these other two guys. These other guys aren't going to touch the court. Please enough. By the way, every other day I get a message about LaMarcus Aldridge. Like they can't play him. Like he got completely destroyed when he was playing late season. He was horrible on defense. He would have the same effect that the Patty Mills effect, just the other way with some of these guys. Like it's just not. I get that we always want the thing that's not there because it seems like it will be better. It's not. I don't believe that it would be better.
And that's the part where you say, like, you go back to those matchups and 14, 15 points, you could use those points. And I keep saying it ends up being a detriment to be sitting there saying, yes, the 14 points get mitigated by what happens on the defensive end. All right, prediction time. I put a question mark there because prediction time. Do you think that do the Nets get this one? Do they at least get this one and make game number 4 interesting? Or the Robert Williams, the Boston Celtics, like does all of the intention not matter ultimately? Like it's just Boston's a better team right now.
I think the Nets win. I think also there's a tendency to overreact sometimes to what's happened in series really early and to project out that will be the thing that always will happen. We've already seen this now multiple times. Toronto won today, right? Like Minnesota looked like they were going to, be able to really make it hard. And then Memphis comes back. Like it just can change. So I think Nets win. I do not feel super confident about it though.
Yeah. Listen, if Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving aren't worth a game 3 when you need it, when you're down 0-2, like, I know that this is like such a beyond the X's and O's or beyond the matchups or what the Boston Celtics are able to do and the depth that they have. You're Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant. You have to be able to get 2 games in this series, frankly, and then live with the results beyond that. If Boston's just a deeper, more balanced team from top to bottom, that's fine. And they're showing all the highlights here as before we get to tip off of Kevin Durant just going through the turnstiles to go from low in the post out to the top of the key to receive the ball. He went through 3 different defenders, all who put a body on him, all who put hands on him, all who played him physically. So I think Brooklyn does get there in this one. And then to your point, it resets the series a little bit because you say now game 4 is everything. And while we're not going to dive into it too much right here, obviously if Ben Simmons is targeting that, whatever, if he's worth 10 minutes of decent defensive basketball, maybe that can be the area in the margins that helps win you game number 4. But before you worry about that, win game number 3. We're out of here, friends. If you liked this, thanks for everybody that got it on the comments. Really we appreciate it. Tell us that you want more of it, and we'll try to do more of that. In the meantime, it's up to Dragic, Brown, and Curry, as they're telling us now, with 16, 14, and 12 points averaged, respectively, over the first 2 games. Time to get the job done, my friends. We will be back in on the post-game podcast on the feed and on YouTube. Let's go, Brooklyn. Break the 0-2 start to this series. Break the 0-6 start to Doug Norrie and Adam Armbrecht's collective viewing of Nets games.
I don't die of heat because it's so hot in here. We gotta turn the heat down. I'm dying.
See you after the game, fellas.